Good evening. I'm Mrs. Hibbert, and I'm going to read Chapter 14, Borden Sees Spots. Sally struggled as she measured and cut the red-tailed hawk feathers to the right length and the shafts to the right shape. Carefully, she picked up Barty. When she turned him over on his back to work on his tail, he snapped his beak and struck out with his strong, sharp talons. "How am I going to do this?" she said. "He doesn't like it." "I'll hold him," said Leon. "I know a trick." He gently picked up the owlet and placed him breast up in one big hand. With the other, he stroked his breast until the owlet slipped into a trance and lay still. "Where did you learn that?" "When we raised chickens, we'd put them in a trance before we wrung their necks." Borden did not look up. Sally winced. An hour later, she and 4 of the 11 feathers imped, but they were too close, still too loose. They looked at her father in desperation. "This is just too silly," she blurted. "We're talking around Mr. James. When are we going to admit that he is the source of all our knowledge about this owlet and ask him to come over here? We need him." "Not in my house," said Leon. Borden suddenly stood motionless, staring at Barty. His mouth dropped open. His eyes widened. The owlet's new breast feather had white spots in them. He knew the truth. He knew it all too well. He had seen that spotted owl hanging from the lamppost in the park very clearly. "I think I'll let him go tomorrow anyway," Borden said. His voice was squeaky from his effort to be nonchalant. "No, sir," said Leon. "I'm going to take him to the hearing. I want the judge to see what a gentle guy I am." Sally heard the alarm in her brother's voice. She looked at him. He was still staring at Barty. She looked at the owlet, then at Borden, and back at the owlet. She looked long, and then she, too, saw the very pale spots and was horrified. "Yeah, Pop," she said. "We'll let him go tomorrow." Borden looked at her. She looked at him, and they exchanged glances. Each said to the other, "Barty's a spotted owl." "Borden," Leon said, stroking Barty to keep him still, "there's some epoxy in the drawer by the sink. Let's try that." Mouth hanging open, Borden obeyed. Sally tried to stick a hot feather dipped in epoxy onto the owl's feather stub. The pungent odor awoke Barty, and he flopped over in Leon's hand. The feather fell out. All right, Leon roared. "Call the goon. I want Barty to fly when I hoot to him in front of the judge." "No," said Borden. "We don't need to call Mr. James." "No, we don't," said Sally stiffly. "I can fix the feathers. Hold him still again." "What's going on?" Cindy asked. She had just come home from work to find her family huddled in the kitchen. "We're imping," Borden said. "Barty broke his tail feathers." "You think you two owl haters liked that bird," she said. "When are you crazies going to let him go?" "Tomorrow," said Borden. "As soon as I fix his tail," said Sally. Cindy looked over her shoulder. "After the hearing, I'll wring his neck," said Leon, but nobody paid any attention to him. "I can do that," she said. "Let me have him." "You know how to imp?" Sally asked in amazement. "You kids always seem surprised that I know anything at all," she said, rolling up her sleeves. "I didn't breed parrots when I was a kid without learning something about feathers and imping. Now, get me a safety razor blade, a needle, and some dental floss." Cindy's fingers moved swiftly and assuredly, and before dark, Barty had a gorgeous red-tailed hawk's tail. "Look at that," said Borden. "No one would ever know what kind of owl he is now. Whoever heard of an owl with a red tail with a black border on it?" he chuckled. "Thanks, Mom," said Sally. "I'll fix dinner. You take a rest." "Well, I don't mind if I do," Cindy said. "I'll peel the potatoes," said Borden. "I'll set the table," said Leon. Cindy held out a morsel of food to Barty. He flew across the kitchen on his new tail and perched on her hand. "He can fly," she said triumphantly, and carried him into the living room, where she put him on the back of the couch, turned on the TV, and picked up the newspaper. "Listen to this," she called. "The president will hear both sides of owls, jobs, and old trees controversy." She read on in silence and aloud. "The vice president will head up a study group. Both will be in Portland, Oregon at the end of the month." "Wow," said Sally. "That's great." "We lumbermen will be trampled," Leon said, and poked Sally's hamburgers to see if they were done. "Let's eat," called Borden. Cindy folded the newspaper, and as she did, she closed it over an insert she had not read. For an individual or a corporation killing or possessing a threatened or endangered species, the penalty is a $200,000 fine and up to 1 year in prison. And that's the end of chapter 14.